when you initially start, you will not have the asset additions link that says Sage Intacct in AP and PO. You also, in your custom fields, you will not have information that would be required for you to bring in your dimensions from your Sage Intacct application. The reason I say that is because there is no import button. And you will notice once we get started and we have Intacct configured, then there will be an import button that will appear here. So let's get started. First, you would have to configure your favorites in Sage Intacct. So I can click here and go links, depreciation links, and Sage Intacct posting. And once I do that, it would say set your favorite GL link. Right now, I'm going to tell it no. That's one way that we could do it. The other way that you can do it is to click on File, go down to Preferences, and go down to the favorite link, click the down arrow, and find your Sage Intacct posting. That's the way I'm going to do that now. So we're going to click on this. I will now click OK. Once you've selected that, now we will go in and configure our credentials in order to log into Sage Intacct. So we click on File, Edit Company, and now you'll notice there is Edit Calendars, and when I click the down arrow, there is my Intacct setup. So I would click on the Intacct setup. Once I click on the Intacct setup, then I would want to make sure that I enter my web credentials here. So you would enter your company ID, your user ID, and the password. This information would have to be obtained from your Sage Intacct administrator. The next thing we would do once we have those credentials set is to check our connection. So we click on Check Connection. It now tells us that we are connected to Sage Intacct, so I can click OK. The next thing you would want to do is to click on the customization. Here you would create your XML packages to send to Sage Intacct. What do I mean by XML packages? Within the Sage Fixed Assets Depreciation, you can build asset templates. From those asset templates, you can export those into an XML file for your accounts payable and your purchasing order. You can create those XML files and import them into Sage Intacct. So now you will have your templates that are available in Sage Fixed Assets. You'll have them available in Sage Intacct so that you can apply those templates to different types of assets. So once I've done that, I go to my posting setup. This is where you will set the information that you would want to post to your general ledger accounts inside of Sage Intacct. It doesn't require a lot of information. We can select department and location. That's good enough. Now we go over to create assets. If I want to be able to bring in assets from my accounts payable and my purchase order modules from within Sage Intacct, then I have to make sure that my accounts payable import is selected and my activate purchasing import is activated. This is the information that it will be pulling from Sage Intacct in order to build an asset. That, along with the asset template that we've uploaded, is enough to create those assets within our depreciation module. So now I click OK. Now we're going to close this because we have Intacct configured. So we click OK. Now when I go in and I look at this, Sage Intacct is now highlighted, so it is usable. Also, in my custom fields, we're going to go back to our department. I'm going to look at my Smart List Manager, and now you notice there is an import. This is saying now I can import my dimensions, which are in Sage Intacct, into my Sage Fixed Assets Depreciation. So if I want to make sure that my information is up to date with Sage Intacct, then I can click import. You would want to do that every so often, just in case there's been additions in Sage Intacct or there's been dimensions that have been removed from Sage Intacct. We can always stay current with the information that is in Sage Intacct. So now you would click close. Once we make sure that all of our dimensions are able to be brought down by showing that it has this import tab activated, now we can click OK. Now we're ready to bring in assets from Sage Intacct. Second thing that we have to do, once we have everything set up, we now bring in those assets. We click on links, asset addition link, Sage Intacct APPO. Once that is selected, it will ask us to close the company. It knows that I was just in that company, so it automatically displays the company. If that is my Intacct company that I want to pull information into, then I leave that selected. Or if I have another company, I can select that particular company. Right now, we're going to use the one that is displaying. I'm going to click on Get Sage Intacct Data. It goes out. It is now identifying items that are in Sage Intacct that has been clicked to create asset. Once that button in Intacct is selected to create asset, then those assets now will appear in our selection here. I can import an asset individually, or I can select all. So I can do it individually, or I can select all of those assets. The next thing you would want to do once you select your assets is to validate. We validate our information. It is going to show us our validation screen, and you notice it says a warning that the template does not exist. That means that I have not uploaded any asset templates from Sage Fixed Assets Depreciation into Sage Intacct. Now, warnings, you can still create assets. If you had errors that shows up on this, then you would have to correct those errors inside of Sage Intacct. But since we only have warnings, I am going to close this out. Now I am going to create the assets. The way that I do that now is I just click on Create Asset. It is going to create those 5 assets that I've selected, 4 from my accounts payable and 1 from my purchase order. It is also going to give me that information as it did before. And you notice it's still saying that the template doesn't exist, but it did create the assets for me. So I can close that. It tells me that my assets were successfully created. Now I click OK. Now I want to open my company, my Fixed Assets Depreciation company. I click on Open Company. Once I open the company, I can go to the end of the list, and these are the assets that I have just created from within Sage Intacct. If you notice, there were 5 assets. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Now, if I double click on one of these assets, then it shows me that this is the asset. This is the template that I was using. Now I can go to my history, and it says that this asset was brought in from Sage Intacct. Now I can go back to main. Now I want to see the source document that was used to create this asset. In order to see the source document, I would make sure that I am logged into Sage Intacct via the web. Now I click on Open Source Document. It will go through and it will open Sage Intacct. Now it shows me that this is my source document that was used to create this. And if you notice, this is my PO number that I put in there. So now if I minimize this, it tells me here my invoice is ELW-8301. If I go back into Sage Intacct and look at that, you notice it is the invoice number is ELW-8301. So now that we have all of those assets brought in from Sage Intacct, and they have now created those assets in our Sage Fixed Assets Depreciation module.